Hi guys, and welcome back to Things No One Cares About. Today I'm going to be doing more of a strict video essay, which is also why I'll be looking at my computer a fair bit more than I usually am. As some of you guys know, I just finished up a master's in anthropology, and for a while now my focus has been on fandom and how fandom is a tangled web with tendrils that extend to every corner of the internet, and so that's sort of what's always on my mind. This past week, at least when I've been writing this, a certain guy named Elm Caleb has also been on my mind. And this whole situation with it, which I'll get more into obviously, intersects with my academic thinking in ways that I really wanted to talk about, and that I've kind of wanted to talk about for a while. So I know it's not my usual genre of content, but today I'm hoping you'll join me in examining the situation with Elm Caleb and how fandom culture led us to this norm of having Twitter and TikTok main characters of the day. So before we can dive into the present, we have to take a step back to define what exactly fandom is and how it's being understood and how I'm going to use it basically in this video. So if you're on the internet, and more specifically on my channel, chances are you have a pretty solid grasp on fandom. After all, most of my videos are about Professor Layton, and you could definitely make a solid case for me being a Professor Layton fandom content creator. Henry Jenkins, sort of the academic father of fandom studies, most simply defined fandom as an amorphous but still identifiable group of people who enjoy various pieces of media in really specific ways. That's pretty vague, but these are most commonly, fan fictions, fan art, cosplaying, writing fan analyses, etc., and you all probably have understandings of what types of media garner fandoms. So The Sopranos, for instance, was a long-running, super successful show with lots of fans, but you wouldn't necessarily say that there's a massive Sopranos fandom, though I'm sure a fandom does exist, so any Sopranos fans who are in Sopranos fandom, don't come at me. But what separates a group of fans from fandoms is basically the practices that they engage in. Whereas Sopranos fans watch the show, maybe even buy some merch, discuss it with friends, whatnot, Sopranos fandom would cosplay as their favorite characters, write fan fiction about them, draw fan art, etc., make memes, TikToks, whatever. Basically just engage in some sort of creative reworking of the show's materials or show's contents. And for this video, that's the main point. That's how I'm describing fandom and how I'm using that term. Fandom is a creative reworking of media, and most importantly, it's fun. It's fun to take characters and a story that you love, let's just say Doctor Who for this next hypothetical, and to just do something with those characters in that story. There's something just inherently enjoyable about doing it, and that's why people do it. Again, on a simple level, this just means writing fan fiction, making fan art, maybe shipping a character or two here or there, and you have enough people doing this on a site like, say, Tumblr, and all of a sudden, you have a veritable Doctor Who fandom. So now you're a fan of Doctor Who, and you start watching Supernatural or Sherlock. I mean, they're similar enough shows. And hey, a lot of your Doctor Who mutuals, I keep wanting to say Doctor Hutuals, which just sounds awful, also post a lot about those shows, so there's a good chance that you'll like it. And now you're doing fandom around a few different shows. Oh, because now wait, it would be super cute if Dean and Sam started dating, went on a double date with Sherlock and Holmes, or maybe Sherlock would be a really great date for 11. And I'll just write a little fanfic, do a little fan art of that. And I'm not going to keep going with this hypothetical because I'm sure you've heard of Super Wholock, and if you haven't, there's such an exciting wealth of information waiting for you on the internet whenever you choose to dive into it. But you can see my point is that fandom begets fandom. Because they share a set of practices. And, there are slight differences in cultural norms between Harry Potter fandom, Sherlock fandom, Doctor Who fandom, whatever. But when we zoom out, we see a set of shared practices. And when I said fandom at the beginning of this video, you already had a set of understandings of what that meant, and I didn't need to define what fandom I was talking about. Although you're probably thinking, 2012 to 2016 Tumblr. That's probably some keywords in your mind. And these shared practices are most commonly and easily called things like shipping, fan art, fan fiction. They have things with specific terms, but on a much more basic level, and this is where my anthropological terminology, whatever, will come in a bit more. It's a practice in poetics, and a practice in the art of nonsense, or making something out of nothing. And poetics here is essentially what it was when you took high school English, where you have alliteration, rhyming, you have these connections that are based on aesthetics and have absolutely nothing to do with meaning. Just have to do with some sort of primal monkey brain joy of finding connections, hence the making sense out of nonsense. And this is what one scholar, Stephen Booth, argues, that there's a reason why we remember nursery rhymes or, more currently TikTok sounds Like, you know, the nursery rhyme, hey diddle diddle the cat and the fiddle, it means literally nothing. Like, you know, means nothing. But the fact that it rhymes makes it get stuck in our head and kind of forces us to think about it. When I said it means nothing, I paused there for a second because I was like, oh, what could it mean? I would only find meaning in that because I'm thinking about the connections there. Something about the pattern makes our brains think that there's something deeper there, that they mean something. And there's something about those nonsensical, meaningless connections and parallels that our brains just love to find meaning in and to think about. And this gets brought into fandom. And if you know, lived through or remember or have heard about the weird Elsa and Jack Frost shipping craze, people in fandom love to find obscure random connections to do fandom around. Take a quick look at this Tumblr post. Here, you have people shipping and doing fan art of and writing imagines or little fan fictions about Tony the Tiger and the Grinch over a simple connection, the fact that they both share a voice actor in this one specific song. And this post isn't supposed to mean something. It's not political, analytical, anything. It's not saying anything purposeful, unless I've seriously misunderstood something. It's just the product of people finding a connection and creatively exploring it because it's fun to do so. It's fun. It's fun. And in sum, we can understand fandom as such, as a community that prioritizes creative reworkings on the basis of these fun connections or parallels, and it's motivated by fun. So, going to the rest of the internet, for a while, like I said, you were probably thinking 2012 to 2016, around then, like Tumblr. And for a while that was true, like fandom and fandom practices were quarantined to specific forums or larger websites like Tumblr. But, you know, this changed for a couple of different reasons. People who are online tend to be really online. If you have one, you know, if you're super active on Tumblr, chances are you're probably super active on something else too. Social media has only become more and more common and more popular. Then in 2017, we had the Tumblr porn ban that caused a lot of people and fan artists to leave Tumblr and head to other websites like Twitter that were more not safe for work, or that were more not safe for work friendly. You also had TikTok become way more popular, and all these factors led to migrations of fans and fandoms. Although I hesitate to say migrations because, again, it's not like a physical migration, like you can be in multiple places at once now. But either way, you had an exportation of fans and an exportation of fan practices. Now you have people doing fandom around non-typical fandom media. It's not even, you know, writing fanfiction about Doctor Who or even The Sopranos like I talked about. Now it's people imagining a lesbian romance between the green and brown M&M because of certain traits, and oh my gosh, it's so clear, the green M&M is so clearly a top, blah blah blah. And I understand that most of these are done ironically. I've been writing and thinking about irony and subversion on the internet enough to do a whole separate video about that. But ironic or not, we're seeing a huge spread of these practices. And even the terminology has shifted. More and more I'm seeing jokes being made, you know, where people are calling gossip about them unconfirmed fan theories, or making TikToks about the lore of like Shane Dawson or other real people. Most recently, another instance that I thought about making a video of, but for reasons decided not to, was people talking about lore around a mentally ill person who was that week's TikTok's main character, and this was a few weeks ago, so you might be familiar with the situation. And again, while there's a sense of irony and joking, you know, in practice there's been a very real fandomification, to use a made-up term, of the real world. And with that mentally ill person and that whole situation on TikTok, again, I'm not going to name the account, but this person's TikTok account was describing how they had dissociative identity disorder and explaining all their various alter personalities. And from there, other accounts would cosplay as those alter personalities or write little fan fictions about them, basically do textbook fandom in the most classic sense around this real person. And in the background, there was a whole ethical conversation about if this person was faking DID, if it's ableism even if they do have, or don't have DID. But honestly, all these ethical conversations are secondary because people weren't making TikToks about them, you know, because of their ethical beliefs or any sort of like moral drive to talk about this. It wasn't done in those ways. You had people making literal, like, somebody made a news account about news updates about this person and like set up this whole like newsroom situation, playing a huge joke essentially. My point is that it's not done in any serious way, or, you know, it's not an ethical or moral duty that people feel like they have. They're doing it because they saw a place to make connections and to do something creative with them and to do fandom. And this now brings us to West Elm Caleb. So this past week on TikTok, a woman posted a fairly normal video talking about how she went on a great date with a guy named Caleb, only to have him never contact her again. And people in the comments asked her if this Caleb worked at West Elm, and her Caleb did not. But in the comments, other women realized that this West Elm Caleb, they'd all gone on dates with him, and they soon made their own TikToks about their experience, talking about how they had gone, matched with him on like Tinder or whatnot, and how he had love bombed them or been overly affectionate in a way that is usually a precursor to abuse, that he had sent unsolicited nudes to one woman, gone on 2 dates in one day, etc., that he stopped messaging or ghosted most of these women. You know, a lot of them had like similar stories to tell about this guy. And in the TikToks, people posted pictures of his profile and the messages leading to him being doxxed or having his actual information, things like his LinkedIn pages and like his real life information, like that information was leaked. Brands, you know, got in on the action, making the usual snarky tweets or TikToks about them in a way that, of course, so they can market whatever they're selling. And, you know, after this whole thing, it sparked larger conversations about the norms of online dating and dating apps, sexual harassment, appropriate internet etiquette, sparked these whole ethical, big picture conversations. And for the time being, I'm going to put those conversations aside to sort of look at this initial West Elm Caleb thing under the lens of fandom, because for me, again, because I've been writing about fandom, it seems so easy to view it like that and really useful to view it that way, because what we have is a whole bundle of connections that people are rushing to create content around. In the first video, people were looking to see if the Caleb in the first video was their Caleb, and it's fascinating because it's not. West Elm Caleb isn't even the person who this first lady made a video about. You know, her first video is pretty innocuous. I don't think she had a huge following, and plenty of people post like just stories about their everyday that just happen to go viral because of TikTok's ever mysterious algorithm. But this whole situation spiraled, and you had more and more women coming to the comments hoping to draw connections, hoping that their Caleb, you know, based on the connection of one name, that they could make assumptions about the guy that they went on a date with. And like I said, making connections is fairly innocuous, but here it's being done in the service of creating a more interesting narrative and trying to, in my opinion, write what is essentially a fan fiction about the reality of these events. People were trying to see if they had another connection that could form some interesting pattern that would make Caleb fit as the villain in this story. And this extended to the point where people were trying to find DC's West Elm Caleb or their own city's West Elm Caleb, trying to create some sort of like extended universe of West Elm Calebs. And it's bizarre when you think about it. Brands too were chomping at the bit to find connections to their products so that they can become part of the story. You know, Hellman's trying to be the feminist brand of the people, ready to call out Caleb for being just another white man, blah, blah, blah. Sorry, I'm being sarcastic. I have a lot of opinions about the situation. And getting back to the ethics of it, on the side of this whole larger conversation, you had people arguing that the women were justified. I mean, sending unsolicited nudes, that's sexual harassment. Love bombing is essentially abuse. Ghosting is emotional abuse. He's clearly the villain. And then you have the opposite argument. These women are entitled rich white women, which that's an argument I've seen. I would like to note that I don't think the first woman who posted a video was white, and I know a lot of other people posting videos about this. Not everybody was white, so, you know, that's just a generalization I also want to flag. They're entitled rich white women. They're crazy for not expecting this treatment because that's dating apps, and even though it's not right, that's what happens on them. Caleb's just an everyday guy, and they're the villains for doxing him. And the unfortunately boring answer is that reality is boring, and people are nuanced, and I doubt anybody in this situation was purposely acting maliciously, or, you know, no one's really a good guy or a bad guy. And it's so cliche because it's boring. Sorry, but that's probably the truth of it. You know, sending dick pics unasked for is completely inappropriate and is harassment. But it is also pretty normal on dating apps, and some people think that's flirting. That's a whole separate conversation. Doxing is completely wrong. But also in this situation, these women aren't, you know, it's not like somebody's saying like, I'm gonna dox West Elm Caleb at 4:30 on Saturday, January 22nd, unless I have these demands met. They're just posting a funny story, and they're not thinking about doxing him. And there are plenty of amazing pieces being written right now. Also some not so amazing pieces, but people have written about situations like this, talking about why it's really dangerous to overextend harm by calling ghosting and love bombing abuse, because they're not. Not everything that you don't like is abuse. I'm sorry, I'm getting so like heated about this. There are plenty of people who go into way more detail and are way more qualified to explain those rationales. And I'll try to link some in the description, but you can find a lot because, again, a lot of people are talking about this right now. And a lot of other people talking about why this is a completely disproportionate reaction. And then you have people talking about the algorithmic side of things, where, again, not everybody who makes a TikTok is expecting to go viral. And the first woman who posted this probably had I would bet my life she had no idea this was going to happen. She was just trying to tell a funny story on TikTok. And I'm bringing in fandom not as a way to avoid these conversations, but as a way to explain how all of them connect and how all of these larger conversations even become relevant in the first place. And I think that when we shift our understanding of Elm Caleb or any other TikTok or Twitter villain of the week, we don't see people randomly deciding to mob or fangirl even one person. We see people finding connections and deciding to do fandom around them. People can talk about the ethics of the situation after it's all said and done, but they're doing it in the moment because it's fun. It is fun to narrativize reality and to cast yourself as the protagonist, and anyone who wrongs you or does something you don't like is the antagonist. And the ethics are all an afterthought. And to bring in, some of my own fandom, I keep thinking, I'm making my own connections. I keep thinking about Twilight when Edward is saving Bella from the truck, and he says after the fact that he thought about all these logical explanations of why he should save her. It would be a problem if her blood got spilled because then he would have to eat it or whatever, and everyone would know he was a vampire. And while all these things are true and logical, they didn't matter because that's not the reason why he saved her. He saved her because he felt like it. When these women were making TikToks, I'm sure they weren't thinking about this as an ethical duty they had to warn other women, though that narrative was prevalent on the tail end of this whole event. I think that they just wanted to make a TikTok about an experience that they had, and later on, other women wanted to join in on it and find connections and cast themselves as some sort of character in this story. A self-insert fanfiction, if you will. And to be clear, it's not my intention. I know I'm getting very, uppity about this. It's not my intention to sound all high and mighty and to act like these types of things aren't things that I've not done, or that these women are evil, or that Caleb is evil, because, like I said, I don't think anyone looks good in this situation. But my point with this video, and the reason that I've been studying fandom in a more academic, traditional sense, is that, like a lot of other people online have talked about, I think that we need to be so much more attentive to what happens when we fandomify our lives. When we envision our lives and actions like a story that we're doing fandom around or being fans of, we get so wrapped up in writing an interesting story that we forget that it's real. And there are ethical and moral considerations and consequences that we have to pay attention to. And this is so critical, I think, more and more with social media, because with social media, you are literally creating a text or a piece of media, and it is so easy to distance yourself from that and to not see the things that you're creating as yourself, and to see them as kind of separate, like you're here and it's a projection that you're doing fandom with, or that you're making connections around, that you're cosplaying with. But if the situation teaches us one thing, it's that there are consequences for that. And again, I'm not a social media bad, kind of person. I think there's a lot of great things about it. Obviously, I'm on YouTube. I'm on basically every social media platform there is. And that's part of why I wanted to make this video, because I've seen myself make TikToks or draft tweets or write, think about video concepts that I'm just thinking about because it'd be fun to do, in sort of fun in a sense of creating a larger connection or a larger story or narrative. And when I take a step back and think about it, I'm like, well, that's actually not the type of person that I want to be online. And I feel like I'm sounding so cliche because a lot of other people have talked about it. But as somebody who's been studying these things, it's driving me crazy every time I see another freaking hero or villain of the week, and then I see after the fact people trying to impute all sort of ethical decisions, because I don't think anybody's thinking ethically when they do any of this. Sort of my larger point, to sum it up, sort of the too long didn't watch thing, is that fandom and the exportation of fandom practices and the popularization of fandom has made it so that fandom is happening everywhere, not just in fandom. And what I mean by that is that people get so wrapped up in making fun connections and creating fun pieces of media or fun texts or fun tweets, fun memes, whatever, that they're focused on making something interesting and a fun narrative, and that makes for a good fan fiction, to use that terminology. In the best case scenario, what we've created is nonsense, like the Grinch or Tony the Tiger, that whole post, where something that's just, you're making connections out of nothing. But in the worst, most dangerous things, you're doing fandom around real people and more prevalent, you're doing fandom around politicians and politics, and you're letting, not you, sorry, but people are letting fandom decisions drive the ethical fallouts of it. And that's so dangerous, obviously. I don't think I need to explain why somebody letting fandom drive their politics is unethical. The other dangerous thing about fandom is that everybody has this sense of, well, I'm not in fandom, you know, people who are in fandom are the cringy, homestuck fans from Tumblr or whatever, and even the people in fandom think that they're better than the other people, but these practices are something that we all, if you're online, if you're really online and participating and active online, these are probably things that you've done before, and it just can be really dangerous. I just kind of wanted to make this video to talk about the situation and to talk about this larger set of issues that I've been thinking about, you know, more professionally with fandom and the problems with fandom. So if you watch this video and you stuck around till the end, thank you. Sorry, I didn't mean to get all ranty. It's just something I'm very passionate about because I love being online. I think it can afford so many amazing things, both socially, you know, politically. There's a lot of great benefits to being online, but it's a huge problem when we're not paying attention to, we're not really doing things with like morals or ethics, or we're not doing things purposefully, really. We're just doing them to be fun. And I love having fun. I think it's fun. Like I said, I've been studying this for a while, and I've written a fair bit on it and thought a fair bit on it. So if like this is interesting, let me know down in the comments below. Like I said in this video, I've written and thought a fair bit about subversion online, and that's another thing I would be interested in making a video on, but I'm not sure if anyone really would care. Although the channel's called Things No One Cares About for that exact reason. Hope to make a more like lighthearted video next time. Bye!